Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Clover. I'm your host, Clover Sterling. I'm happy to have you joining in today. Have you ever felt depressed and having anxiety? Well, my guest today, after 30 years in the industry of furniture and technology, he's decided to follow his natural calling, helping people using energy modalities. Exploring the emotion code is Al-Karim Chatoor.
Hi.
Al-Karim, thanks for coming on.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
The emotion code is such a fascinating name. What is it really?
Well, it's exactly what it says. It's working with emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And from the time that we're born, and actually I would say even before we're born sometimes, we have emotions that we absorb in our body. So let me give you an example of an iceberg. When you see an iceberg, you only see the tip of the iceberg, but the majority of the iceberg is on the bottom, right? In the same manner, our body at the subconscious level is at 90%, whereas at the conscious level, we're only 10%. So whether it's emotions that are absorbed while we're aware of it, or our subconscious mind is aware of it, they get absorbed in our body. And that can cause a blockage in our body. And sometimes when we're trying to achieve our objective, our goals, and we find that we're always being blocked, it's because of that emotional blockage. And so the emotion code looks at these blockages that have happened to you in your life and how they are causing you not to be able to live that life of ease, joy, and love.
So it's like you keep looking back instead of going forward?
It is stopping you to move forward. Not that you're looking back. There is a resistance that is created, and that resistance, because of that emotional blockage, our body has chemicals in there. And so if you were to think of emotions as chemical, the mind and the body are two sort of separate entities that work together.
Right.
The mind sort of creates the incident, the body reacts and creates a response to it. The emotions are what gets the mind to constantly create more and more of this emotion that we play back and forth in our mind. And so you are reacting to or attracting from the universe what you have trapped in your body. If you release that and you go to a higher frequency emotion, then you will achieve your objective and your goal of living in peace and harmony.
So having used the iceberg analogy, I would call it then the iceberg effect for now. Do you think every human goes through the iceberg effect at some point in their lives?
Well, statistically, I think 90% of North Americans have trapped emotions in their body, of which at least 70% have what's called a heart wall, and we can talk about that later.
But why is that? Is it because of what society has created, the lifestyle?
I would say environment would have an impact of it, but I think as human beings, we are constantly brought up in an environment that is forcing us to become in a certain manner. And so when that happens, we have stress. For instance, as parents, you have a child, I have a child. How many times have we just screamed and yelled at them because we have had a bad day?
Right.
It has nothing to do with them. How are they absorbing that? What has that done to them in terms of their growth? Is it impactful that in the future? They say like father, like son. It goes to further than that, right? If that's how they've grown up, that emotion is trapped in your body, their child is going to be brought up no differently.
So because of what I'm going through, I'm yelling at my child and I'm transferring and he's becoming angry and he lives with that.
And he lives with that. So then that emotion may get transposed in different ways. So there is 3 stages of it. There's the one aspect where you actually look at that emotion in your body. And I compare it to a car accident sometimes. So when you're driving a car, sometimes you'll have an impact, which is just a low impact, right? And you process it, your body doesn't go through any trauma, and it's processed. The other way is, you have a hard accident, like you hit a brick wall or you have another accident. What happens is there is no inertia, there's no momentum, there's a blockage. And when that happens, what happens to your body? It is shifted. It is shifted, so then you have to go to a physio or go to a doctor and start taking medicine. In the same manner, emotions that are processed are going to be okay, because we do have the ability in our body to be able to process them. It's the ones that we don't process, and most of those are at the subconscious level. That you don't process, and then they start creating blockages. And when those blockages are created, that's when you find that it will cause a misalignment. When you take the word dis-ease, right? Disease from a medical term, we say that there's something wrong with our body. But when you break it down, it's a dis-ease. There is not ease in your body of flowing. When you look at your body, it's full of energy. We're energy beings, right? Our body is a manifestation of energy, and then there's the energy that we don't see, the chi, the prana, right? And when that emotion gets blocked, that chi energy is not flowing properly. It's a dis-ease. And then it starts creating all sorts of symptoms, whether it is emotional symptoms of anger, of depression, of ADHD, or if it's physical, of a backache or a stomachache, or you're gaining weight or you're losing weight. All of those are related to that.
So when you speak of the blockage, are you saying, say I'm depressed and someone's trying to offer me help, maybe counseling, blocking by not receiving?
I wouldn't necessarily say that you're blocking by receiving. What's happening is that those emotions that are trapped in your body, let me step one step back. Each organ in our body is responsible for different emotions.
That's what I learned that one.
Right? So if a trapped emotion of, let's say, anger happens to be in your body, and you are more depressed, then that anger is probably trapped in the organ that is responsible for depression. So there's two different emotions and two different concepts here. There is an emotion that is trapped in a part of an organ that is now showing you the symptoms of it. So when we release that anger emotion, because whatever that anger emotion may have been caused from any time of your life, then you're curing that symptom.
So you have to release that, right?
Absolutely.
You yourself. So that's like, say, forgiveness.
Forgiveness is a big part of it.
Because if you hold on to something, you're not forgiving, it becomes heavy. So once you release.
I'm glad you brought that up, because what we do is we carry an emotional baggage, right? That the emotions that are trapped in our body, we refer to them as emotional baggage. And when we remove that emotional baggage, you're literally letting go. And when you let go of that emotion, then you find that ease in your body. And then you're finding that life of joy and ease is what's attracted from the universe to you.
So how do you help? Someone comes to you having baggages. You apply the emotion code.
Yes.
Do you have to know what's causing them to be down?
Actually, we use the word "we" when we're treating, because what we do when we are addressing the emotion code with an individual that's coming to me is that we first find out what the trapped emotion is. And the way we do that is that we look at the individual's subconscious mind, or we try and connect with the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind knows everything, right? Let's look at our bodies, for instance. There is 1 million processes that are going in our body as we speak right now. How many of them are we conscious of?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Swallowing our saliva, blinking our eyelids, breathing, digesting the food that we may have just had.
Yeah.
All of that is happening at a subconscious level. In the same manner, the subconscious mind, I would say, is very much like a computer, right? The computer, if you look at the basics of computers, I know today they're very sophisticated, but when we go to the basics, it's actually 2 numbers, 0 and 1. Every communication that happens at the computer level is based on a binary system.
Well, yeah.
And where is that coming from? That's coming from our bodies. Our bodies also is very much based on a binary system. The body knows what's true and what's false. So when we connect with the subconscious mind knows what's true and false. You know, that's how the police sort of give you this test, right? That they test you on. And they say, well, you know, it's a lie detector test. Well, how is it a lie detector test?
So are they trying to tap into your emotions? Yeah.
Right? So when you're doing a lie detector test, you consciously may be saying, well, no, I didn't do this, no, I didn't do this. But your system, you'll either start sweating or you'll become warm, and that's how they track that, right? And so your body knows, the body will never lie to you. The body always tells you the truth. And so when we're able to connect with that subconscious mind, when we're able to find out from your body, then we find out what trapped emotions was it. And through the way we do that is by muscle testing. Right?
So it's very safe to say the truth lies within.
Very well said. I like that.
Okay. We're taking a quick break. Stay with us. We're talking about the emotion code. back. Before the break, we're talking about the emotion code with Al Karim. So back to what we were talking about. How is emotions trapped in the body?
Good question. So there's a number of different ways that they're trapped, right? The first one is what's called an absorbed emotion, right? It's one that belongs. Sorry, the first one is your own emotion, right? So it belongs to you. So going back to the example of a child, right? So you've had a bad day, you come and you sort of yell at them for something that may have done very simple, and you do that, right? Or you're let's say walking around and you see an incident that happens that actually bothers you to your core, and you will take that. So that's your emotion, something that happened to you. So bullying is a prime example. When we're all in school, all of us have either seen or been bullied at some point. That is an emotion that belongs to you, and then we extend that to an absorbed emotion. And a lot of times, what I see is that as children, we don't give them much credit, but what we find is that, when parents, especially in today's society, we find that there's a lot of nuclear families or families that have split and stuff like that, that impacts them a lot.
Yes.
Right? And so when the parents are fighting or the parents are going through a hard time, whether it's emotional, whether it's financial, it's physical, they will absorb that emotion.
And normally they would be silent about it, but they're going through something.
That's right. And then sometimes they may not even be aware of it, that they're actually absorbing it, right? Because we're absorbing it at a subconscious level, not necessarily at the conscious level. So it could be either or, not necessarily always at the subconscious level. But then that becomes an absorbed emotion where, you have had an incident that you witnessed that becomes yours. The third one is what I call is an inherited trapped emotion. So just like genes get passed from parent to child, an emotion that is not processed by the parents or the grandparents, and it can go to multiple generations, it will find itself manifesting because of a certain shift in energy that happens within your body.
Is it a certain action within the person?
So it's not necessarily an action. If we go back to the concept which I mentioned earlier, that we're all energy beings, right? And so when there's a shift in that energy, when that energy becomes activated for a number of different reasons, either an incident happens or it is just something that has brought back that particular memory to be activated, then that, or it would be constantly. You find people with financial trouble constantly from generation to generation. It's because they have an emotion that's trapped in them that's not allowing to break out of that cycle.
And then you find people now are trying to change that. Is it possible for them to change it? You hear people testify, oh, I'm doing this because when I was growing up, this happened. I do not want it to continue happening. So trying to break generational curses. So can they actually change it?
So I've found that when we actually release the emotion that's causing that trapping, because remember that the relationship between the mind and the body, and if that blockage is constantly there, you may be constantly trying, but you're not going to be able to do it easily. I'm not saying that you can't do it. It's more of a struggle. It's like if I was to climb a mountain, if I had all the tools, would it be easier for me to climb the mountain than to be able to go without tools, and so I'm just going to do it physically without any of my tools? In the same manner, right? If the emotions are released, then you find that the universe starts becoming aligned with you, and then all of a sudden these doors open up for you. And it's a lot easier for you to pass through and to achieve your goals, whereas the other way you're struggling. And I'm not going to suggest that it doesn't happen. It's just more difficult to do it.
But then if doors are open up, I myself would say, oh, it's a blessing, of which I think it is.
I think it's a combination of things, right? It's a blessing because now you're aligned with the universal force.
So I identify it that way.
Exactly. So I identify as the universe being at a certain frequency. And when you have your emotions are at different frequencies, then you're not aligned with that frequency. And all of a sudden when you get aligned, it's like when you're driving on the highway, right? Sometimes you just have that clear path, and sometimes you have that blockage. So then, do you want to go on the HOV or the 407, or do you want to go on the 401 where there's a traffic jam?
And sometimes you're driving and it's all green lights you're getting.
Absolutely.
And you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
But then in life, for every action, there's a reaction, right? Because if you are delayed, probably you wouldn't be getting all green lights. So that's what you're going through, and you're happy about that.
True. I think there's a famous saying by the Aga Khan that says, struggle is the meaning of life. Victory or defeat, though, is in the hands of God. So then when you are aligned with that, then God, the universe, the higher self that we talk about gets aligned with you, right? So victory or defeat, yes, absolutely, is in the hands of God. But struggle is our thing. And by releasing these emotions, you sort of release that struggle that you have to go through.
Have you ever come across some people, they're always happy, and you try to imagine, what are they like being sad? So I'm wondering if in their own setting away from the public, if they're ever down. Yeah, I've known people who they're always so hype.
So I'll ask you a question. Do you find that people that are always happy are happy inside, or is that...
I'm wondering if probably
right?
they're not happy inside, but they're giving off that frequency.
And without any judgment, which one is it? And it's hard to tell. Sometimes you all have this facade of being happy outside so that you're covering the inside, or sometimes we're happy inside and then we cover the outside. So which one is it? But I can tell you one thing is that when we release those trapped emotions that are in our body, that there is a feeling of lightness that you get, right? That you feel light. And so you don't necessarily have to be happy. It's like the analogy of a butterfly.
But happiness exists though.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think that I go by the notion that love, joy, and happiness is the core reason that we're brought onto this world. The struggles that we go through are sometimes self-imposed, and so and some of those, like I said, are trapped emotions that are either absorbed, are our own, or inherited. And we have to get rid of them so that you find that core happiness.
And sometimes through your own action, like I said before, for every action there's a reaction.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. So when you're looking at emotions and stuff like that, we should clarify that there are good emotions: happiness, joy, love. Those are high emotions. Let me give you an example. Have you ever worked with a tuning fork?
A what?
A tuning fork. It's a fork that sort of resonates at a certain frequency.
Oh, no.
They use that to tune pianos, and that's why it's called a tuning fork.
Haven't, no.
Right. So if tuning forks all resonate at different frequencies. Now, if you were to take 10 tuning forks and put them together, and you take the one with the lowest frequency, and if you were to ring that, what would happen is that all of the other ones, no matter how high their frequency was, they will all start resonating at the lowest frequency. In that same manner...
So majority follows the lower?
Correct.
Wow.
And so when you have, so answering your question of going back to, why if people are happy, are they truly happy? What ends up happening is that if you have that emotion that is of a high frequency, so love, joy, happiness, peace are all high frequency emotions.
So if you have those, you leave it alone?
I would say that you want to attract more of those.
Oh, okay. Like double love, double joy, double peace?
What will happen is that the more you have those emotions flowing through your system, the more you will attract that.
And that's consistent. That has to be consistent.
Well, it's consistent with the laws of nature. Unlike what we're told that opposites attract, in the universe world, the higher frequency actually attracts higher frequency. And so that's why all of those doors and all of those ease of life comes to you, because that's what you're attracting. But when you're at those lower frequencies of grief, of sadness, of depression, of helplessness, well, then you're resonating at that frequency. And that's what you're going to attract.
And then some people can be down for long, having lost a loved one. They can be down for a long time.
And losing a loved one is one of those, losing a loved one, going through a marital separation. Those are all very difficult situations in our life that we go through. And if we don't process them, like I said, then you're blocking it. You have to process it. Right?
So how do you help? How do you apply the emotional code?
Sure. So what happens is have you ever got muscle tested?
No.
So muscle testing again goes back to our subconscious mind.
But I've had a massage.
Right. So massage is different from muscle testing. So muscle testing is whether you're strong in terms of your answer or you're weak. So the best way to test muscle testing is to put your arm out and you sort of press. Now somebody else should be doing that for you. So what I would do is I would do this and test you. So
I have to hold
resist
strong.
me, and say my name is.
My name
and
is.
say your name.
My name is Clover Sterling.
Okay, and resist me. Okay, now say my name is Joe.
My name is Joe.
See, you're going to be weak.
Because I'm not Joe.
That's right. But your body internally knows that.
Yeah.
So in the same manner, we ask questions, is there a trapped emotion in your body? And when we find out that there is one, then we have a process that we follow to find out what trapped emotion is it.
Because right here, sorry, I knew who I am, so I stood strong.
Correct, but that is conscious.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we're going through your subconscious mind, right? So at the subconscious level, we find out what trapped emotion is trapped in your body. Where is it trapped in your body? At what age was it trapped in your body? And then by intuition and by asking questions and having a conversation, we're able to find out exactly what emotion it was, what time it happened, what age period it happened in, and what it was related to. And whether it's trapped, whether it's absorbed, whether it's inherited. And when we find that out, then we need three things sort of to remove them.
If it's inherited, isn't that harder to do?
No. In inherited, as long as you are able to identify the emotions, as long as we identify the emotion, we're able to release it.
Oh.
Right. And when it's an inherited emotion, we actually find out, is it from the father's side, is it from the mother's side? And did the father get it from the mother's side or the father's side? And how many generations back does it go? And we find out all of that, and when we actually release an inherited trapped emotions, we release it from past, present, and future.
So when you release it, where does it go? It goes on to be trapped with someone else?
Right. Did you take physics?
No.
No? Have you ever heard the word energy cannot be created or destroyed?
Yeah.
It can only be transformed.
Transfer. Yeah.
So remember, we're energy beings, and emotion is a ball of energy that's stuck in your body. So we take that energy, and we need three things, right? The emotion, the physical, and the science. So the emotion is finding out the emotion that's trapped.
So you have to be careful where you go and who you hang out with.
Absolutely, that has an impact.
Right.
So just to answer your question about how we release it. So, the physical is the emotion itself. Sorry, the emotional is the emotional part. The science is we use a magnet. Magnet is the purest form of energy. And so we use that to be able to transform it. Right? So the magnet is going to transform that energy. And the energy, the emotions all travel through the lymphatic system. So we use the governing median, which starts over here and ends over here, and we roll down the governing median with intention, love, and gratitude to release the emotion.
So you have to study the human body.
The human body understanding is a benefit, but it's not necessary.
Wow. So someone who has been released, what happens next? It doesn't come back? Or they move on to happiness, because that was negativity?
Very good question. So once a trapped emotion is released, it never comes back for that particular incident.
Oh.
So let me explain that. So if you have an incident, or let's say of a trapped emotion of grief, let's say, one of your dear person passed away and you didn't quite process that grief. And that happened at a particular time in your life. So we release that emotion. That particular emotion of grief will never come back into your body. You may have some other grief that's there that we have to identify and release. But that particular one is released forever.
Release, but don't you at least recall this had happened?
When you do recall, the mind does not process it in the same level of intensity as it did previously. Because now you have processed it. And it's transformed. It's transformed into an energy where you have now let go. You're not holding back onto it.
So people who have gone through trauma, do you help?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, because trauma is also there's something that's called a psychic trauma that has multiple emotions that are trapped together, and so when you have that, that sometimes causes trauma, but it depends what kind of trauma we're referring to, right? Is it psychological trauma? Is it physical trauma, right? And you want to be able to address that both individually in a different manner.
Oh, so each of those are addressed
Yeah.
separately.
I know we're talking about the emotion code, but the next step of the emotion code that I also practice is called the body code, which looks at actually the whole body and also identifying misalignments in your body. So physical trauma is handled well with the emotion code. Psychic trauma and stuff like that is handled more on the body code level.
That's an entire show all by itself.
We'll come back onto that.
We have come to the end of today's show. Thanks for watching. I hope you've learned something from the emotion code. It was a pleasure having you. My name is Clover Sterling. Thanks for watching.